All right. So CrowdStrike crossed $1 billion in AWS marketplace transactions. They're live and transacting across all three major hyperscalers, and they've built a Salesforce environment with hundreds of users running inside a fully integrated cloud go-to-market stack. Now, those outcomes are the product of the right people with different jobs being genuinely aligned and executing towards the same goal. Now, today we're going inside that motion. I'm Kevin Heidorn from Tackle. I've been in a front row seat for a big part of this journey with CrowdStrike. And I'm joined by Christian Noel, Max Forster, and Billy Hightower from CrowdStrike. Gentlemen, welcome back to Cloud Go-to-Market XP. So, before we get into the mechanics of how this all works, I want to start with the honest version of the story, because I think that's actually more useful for everyone watching. So, Christian, you've been in this longer than almost anyone on your team. You've seen this motion grow from the early days to where it is now. What's the single biggest thing that changed?
I feel like having a solid team is something we had to build over time. Initially, when I came on board, I was one of the founding members of the official private offers marketplace team, and it was a team of 4 of us then. We've rotated out, people have upskilled and transitioned to other teams. We've brought on new people like Max and Billy that have supported us from cross-functional teams to just directly affecting cloud. So I think having an idea of where we started and when we were building out those private offers to knowing exactly which individual piece of the team does and how they can help us scale the motion, that's something that we had to just develop over time.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think what Christian just described is something a lot of teams are still trying to get their head around. The volume really sneaks up on you. What felt manageable probably at one stage stops being manageable pretty fast. And if your ops foundation isn't built for scale, you're absolutely going to feel it in the deals. So that's a good entry point into how the team around this motion actually works, because I think it's the structure here is genuinely different from what most ISVs actually have in place. So right over to you, Billy. Billy, you're the one out in front of partners and customers every day, working to move deals forward. A lot of alliance leaders watching this are doing that job largely solo, without much of a support structure behind them. So how does Cloud Go-to-Market show up across the CrowdStrike org? And how does your role actually connect to what Christian and Max are doing?
So, and thanks for having us today. Billy Hightower, I lead go-to-market at CrowdStrike for our cloud hyperscaler partners. The thing for me that's most top of mind when it comes to what we've built over the years, right? Kevin, you just said that we did $1 billion through the AWS marketplace. Now I guess George said it on Mad Money a few weeks ago. We did 1.5 billion just last year, right? So the scale of the partnership that we've grown over the last 7+ years with AWS and now our growing hyperscaler partners being GCP and Microsoft, the business is huge, right? We're talking billions of dollars through cloud marketplaces just at CrowdStrike every year. And if we look across the industry, we're seeing hundreds of billions of dollars flow through cloud marketplaces. And so the thing that's most critical for me is you went back and said that a lot of alliance leaders feel like they're doing this on their own. There's a level of confidence that I think people need to have around the partners that we support. Like I take a step back every day and say, hey, my team is the interface between CrowdStrike and Amazon or Google or Microsoft, like 3 of the biggest organizations in the world, and making sure that when you approach the business internally, there's something for you to be able to give to all the different partners within the organization. So I look at our marketing team, for example. We may have an event. Our event's probably a little bit bigger when we throw an AWS or a GCP logo on it, right? I look at our engineering team and we think about the integrations that we build with these platforms, and we secure customers who run their workloads on the cloud. So making sure that we get the first right of refusal to build those integrations, and we're leading as we're partnering with our engineering team, all the way to the different organizations across our managed service providers, our national resellers, our distributors. If I look back at our Global Partner Summit last year, and actually at Falcon last year, which is our yearly global event, we gave AWS the Global Partner of the Year award. But when we gave them that award, the person who came up and spoke is we did a video from all the parts of the ecosystem that AWS touches. So we had our top distributors around the world. We had all of our top national resellers. We had our engineering partners all kind of put together a thank you, because it wasn't just an AWS win. It was a true win for the entire ecosystem that touches CrowdStrike. So being able to make sure that you go into your organization and understand all the people who you can help, advance by having the partnership with the hyperscaler cloud partners is key to be able to get the buy-in internally to go do the things that we've been able to do over the past few years. The other thing that's just top of mind for me is customer buying patterns have changed, right? If we go back years ago, we were really pushing customers to the marketplace. And I will say that as all of us have scaled, and there's many organizations now in this $1 billion club, there's quite a few of us and millions and millions of marketplace transactions that have happened over the years. Procurement teams have just gotten smarter, right? They've said, hey, we have chose the marketplace as a procurement vehicle for our organization. And just being able to simplify connecting our seller that is working on getting CrowdStrike into the business with the procurement person that's focused on burning down their PPA or reducing their time to get that transaction done or getting a solution in their team's hands faster. If we work backwards from that, it always kind of works out for us to go up and to the right.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, Billy. And yeah, I mean, the flow that Billy described from the field need to the ops layer, and then obviously like the technical execution, the whole team win is something we talk about constantly at Tackle. A lot of companies, they have a Billy. They have someone driving that partnership relationship. But where things can get complicated is when there's no clear path from what that field needs to what actually gets built. So Max, from a business capabilities and integration standpoint, like how do you think about your role relative to what Billy and Christian need from you?
Yeah, well, first off, Max Forster, senior analyst on our business capabilities team at CrowdStrike with the focus. You already kind of said it, Kevin, but on B2B integrations and cloud marketplaces. But I mean, I think just taking a step back on how Christian and Billy and myself work and the rest of the team is it makes it really easy that we all have the same exact goal. And that's really just to grow our cloud business and better our partner ecosystems. That at the basics just makes it very easy. My specific role just really happens to be around operational efficiency and making sure we solution the issues and or projects that Billy and Christian bring to us. Um, I kind of call myself, and you said it a little bit, but I'm the middleman between the business and IT. I make sure I work with Billy and Christian and the rest of the team, gathering all business requirements, making sure I'm understanding what the business needs are, and really putting that together in the correct messaging to get over to the IT team to make sure they're understanding that as well. Once all that is understood, um, I'm helping following timelines, making sure we're staying up to par and actually getting these solutions out to the business so that their lives are easier and we're helping them be more productive. So that's really where my, I guess, job falls into the flow.
Yeah. No, absolutely, and I do want to underline something there too, Max, and because it is something that it's easy to kind of gloss over at times, but staying ahead of the partner roadmaps, including Tackle's roadmap, right, and knowing what's coming before you need it, that's a capability just most ISVs don't invest in until they're already behind it. No, it requires someone who has the trust of both the business and technical side, which is a harder role to fill than it actually sounds. So, and then Christian, from the ops side, like you've seen what happens when that connective tissue just absolutely isn't there. So, so right at your question, Christian, what actually breaks down when the alignment between like ops, integration, and alliances just isn't working?
That's a good question. So when it comes down to how we all work together, we can only do this if we trust each other. I mean, at the end of the day, I have to be able to trust that what Billy wants is going to be something that the business can benefit from and move the needle. But I also have to understand that he's telling me, I have this need. I trust you to go and build it out. That's kind of how our teams work together. I'm going to govern the overall cloud operations where we're putting policy in place. We're trying to see, what's the next feature coming out. but not only what's the next feature coming out, but what's the best feature coming out. And we need to make sure we prioritize that properly and say, okay, something's releasing next month, but the real thing we need is releasing in 2 months. If we have, a long window before our next deployment, that's where I have to make a judgment call. That all only works if Billy trusts me, I trust Max, and the same goes all the way downstream to IT.
Yeah, I want to double click that on that around priority too, right? Because when we look at the number of partners we work with in this ecosystem, right? We're trying to keep up with Tackle, we're trying to keep up with AWS, we're trying to keep up with GCP. At our scale, they want us to see, all these partners want us to see the coolest thing that they just built that's in the roadmap. And for us, one of the things that we previously and still sometimes have challenges with is prioritization, right? Because there's everything from basic break fix on what we do today to, if you talk with AWS right now, they're going to say, we want AI crafting private offers and express models and no touch transactions and consumption-based billing and pay-go. And so trying to figure out a roadmap that balance between what we need to facilitate transactions through the marketplace, in quarter right now, to what do we see the future as the go-to-market for the organization, and tying those priorities together to say, hey, we're going to build this in the next 6 months, this in the next year. And also like being comfortable saying no, because a lot of organizations aren't comfortable with saying no to AWS or Google just because of the size and scale, but try to let them understand that one of the biggest things I learned of working at AWS is working backwards from your customer, right? And in this partner ecosystem, like we are their customer. And so making sure that they understand what we need to be able to be successful versus just, features that may be coming out that don't fit our business use cases, and work with them to like craft those things to help. CrowdStrike is something that I'm very passionate about because my background, I was an AWS rep and we had 200 plus services, and all the product teams are building stuff every single day, and they all want your customers to know about it. So trying to prioritize what things that actually need to get to your customer was like a big part of my charter in a previous life. And I take that even here being on the other side where I'm saying, hey, challenging my AWS team of maybe I don't need to know about 1,000 different features that are coming out, but if there's 10 that are critical because you understand my business, like let's go have a roadmap discussion on those and we'll figure out how to build them into our roadmap. Because there's a lot of noise out there.
Just to add to that too, it's also, we want to foster a healthy partnership and give our feedback on even products we may not use. I have no problem, jumping in on a feedback session just so that we're making sure the industry gets the next best thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think our input is very important due to the volume that we transact, but also some of this stuff might not benefit, an organization of our size, but these organizations that are up and coming could definitely benefit from some of the progress we've made over the last 5 years.
Yeah. No, absolutely. No, and I appreciate the shift into AWS because it's the topic I wanted to move on to next, because it's one of the most instructive parts of the CrowdStrike story. Is we hear a lot about partner relationships in this industry, and sometimes it's mostly about the logo and the press release. What I've seen from the Tackle side is CrowdStrike's relationship with AWS runs a lot deeper than surface level announcements, right? It shows up in how deals actually get done. I know, Christian, you're touching on this a little bit, but want to double click. From an operational standpoint, what does this AWS partnership actually look like day to day? Like, what keeps that relationship running at the level that it does?
Still a trust again. Open channels of communication and making sure that, like Billy was saying, we're aligned on the same goals. It can be a bit much to try and juggle multiple cloud providers while also saying, hey, we're going to enhance our own capabilities, which Max is taking care of internally as well. But I think making sure that when AWS needs something, they know they can reach out to me, they can reach out to, Billy, and get someone immediately. At that same breath, we're working with the other providers, and I want them to feel the same way. I'm available. If there's something operational, if there's something that they want to discuss that's future facing, let's discuss. Let's get on a call. Let's have an email thread. Slack has been, our best friend for the last few years. So we're always going to make sure that we have some open channel communication to make sure, our inputs and outputs are bug free.
Absolutely. And also too, Christian, like there's that monthly, rhythm that we have between, AWS, CrowdStrike, and Tackle. And it's actually something that Tackle is very much a part of. I actually helped build host that with the team monthly, and I can tell you those are incredibly valuable working sessions focused on pipeline and what's driving results. And the kind of engagement with a hyperscaler takes years to build and consistent execution to maintain. So, Billy, I want to jump to you on this. From the alliances side, you're the one translating that partnership depth into actual revenue conversations. So, Billy, what does the AWS partnership depth actually unlock for your sellers and your alliances team when you're trying to close business?
If you look at it, there's so many different places in the deal cycle where we find value, right? So when it comes to the first stages of being able to look at how we leverage funding for marketing and events and creating that top of funnel pipeline with AWS, to then knowing that the solutions that we deliver and drive solve problems for these customers that are built on this platform. Right. If we look at our Falcon Cloud Security suite of solutions, like we're helping customers not be breached. And I've always been a proponent of when customers are breached, they don't build. So when I can talk to an AWS rep and say, hey, by partnering with us, we're making sure that your customer is more secure and they can continue to build at a scale and a speed in AWS where they're not so worried about the things that are happening out there from a security standpoint, because you handle the cloud, we'll handle the security, is a very happy place that we will be in. There's that, making sure that we're solving those customer problems. And if we're doing those two things really well, then the marketplace just becomes a transactional vehicle for that. But we try to make it look easy. There's a lot that goes into it. I think for us, when it comes down to actual deals, it's field alignment, which can be difficult, right? If you look at the way our regions are broken down versus AWS being broken down by vertical, trying to find the closest overlap that we can find. So, for example, to showcase a little bit of the secret sauce, Scott, who's on my team, leads our central region. AWS doesn't have a central region, but who's based there? Auto manufacturing. So if you go to AWS and they say, who's Scott? He's the lead for auto and manufacturing. And he's working with the auto manufacturing team to review pipeline and review upsell opportunities or net new logo opportunities for CrowdStrike. And so the top-down alignment has always been very, very strong. Where we've been focused the last few years is really in the field, building those relationships with the sales teams and the PSMs and the marketplace customer advisors to understand the buying patterns of that customer, and then using that with incentives like MPOP to be able to use that as a negotiating chip to be able to get that deal closed. I think one of the things that I've always been a big fan of is programs like MPOP, where as a seller, you only have so many tools that you can use to get a deal done. And so when the AWS team comes in and says, hey, we've got another tool for you to add to the war chest because we got a time-bound reason that a customer will get an incentive for doing a transaction, that's a way for us to create a compelling event to be able to go get a transaction done. And so the alliances team love it, but our sales reps love it even more because it's another way that it can help get their deal closed. The last piece is also just around the scale, right? I think when we look at our relationship with AWS and the millions of customers they have, we've trained our sellers to understand hyperscaler relationships very early in the deal cycle. Because it's not just aligned to where you're going to transact, it's aligned to what we're going to secure. So they're thinking, hey, how do I secure AWS? But the byproduct of figuring that out is we can go ask to transact through AWS, 3-6 months later when we're getting a little bit closer to doing the transaction.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much for that, Billy. And I do also want to be able to spend at least a minute on one particular area about touching on multi-hyperscaler. It's often underestimated how much operational work goes into expanding across the clouds. Each marketplace has its own requirements, its own workflows, its own co-sell mechanics. In a lot of ways, we set us to tackle. There are 3 separate trains on 3 separate tracks running at 3 separate speeds. Max, fun role, right? You've been in the middle of that work. And so right at you, Max, when you're bringing a new marketplace online, what does that actually look like from an integration standpoint?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, from an operational standpoint, you kind of hit the nail on the head, but there's many different things we have to hit on when onboarding these new cloud marketplaces. Whether it's the simple, and simple may not be the correct word, but simple things that are involved in Salesforce, such as account setup, getting the correct contracts, making sure everything that we already have built and in place with our existing cloud providers works seamlessly with our new partners. That's a massive part of what we have to do when onboarding a new cloud marketplace partner. But also, and probably most importantly, is we need to make sure we can transact with those cloud partners and run a smooth co-sell process. I see Billy shaking his head over there. We really have to focus on that co-sell process and make sure we can share opportunities back and forth with our different marketplace partners at an efficient rate. Another thing is, and I think this is where Tackle has massively helped us out, but every marketplace has their different nuances. When onboarding Microsoft, we were able to take away a lot of existing operational processes that we already had in place for our existing cloud partners. But we also had to build a lot fresh because the way you transact on markets Microsoft versus the way you transact on AWS is a very different process. Throughout that whole engagement and integration, though, and onboarding these new partners, Tackle has been a massive help in making sure we understand those nuances, the roadmaps for each marketplace that we do onboard, and are able to help us flow smoothly through the transaction and co-sell process.
Yeah, I want to double click on that around the nuances to each marketplace, right? Because Chris and I learned this the hard way, right? We originally, when we brought on our second marketplace, we just told everyone it was just like AWS. And that was wrong. And it created a lot of pain in that first year, not because the marketplace was more difficult, but because the way that we enabled our field on how to leverage it was incorrect, if we call it what it is. And that's like on me. So as we've onboarded new marketplaces, but also you look at the features around what we use from those marketplaces, we're trying not to be, sometimes it's like hybrid cloud, where now it's a little bit different. But 10 years ago, when people were just really using compute, it was a race to the bottom, right? You were trying to use the same services the same way across every single cloud provider because you didn't want to build into the actual services that differentiated them because you didn't want vendor lock-in or something. Which kind of goes against the point of actually using the cloud. Marketplaces are almost the same way. We were like, well, let's just use them all the same and tell our sellers that they're all the same. And it's just a question you ask, it's stage 6 before you go close the deal. And as we've gotten smarter internally about leveraging the different marketplaces and co-sell with the different providers and how they work differently, it's actually become an advantage for us, right? So I can tell my seller, hey, expect this type of selling experience when you're working with AWS, and these are the programs you have here. Hey, expect this type of selling experience when we're working with GCP and this type of programs here. All the way down to we haven't talked about legal yet, but one of the biggest nuances between AWS and GCP is some of the contracting. And so making sure that our legal team was aware and our accounts receivable team were aware about the differences, because AR works differently across all 3 cloud providers. And so making sure we understand the differences between all of them, but use them for each of their superpowers, because it allows us to be able to meet customers where they are and still, facilitate a transaction in a way that helps CrowdStrike make deals bigger and close deals faster.
Oh, absolutely. And I do want to touch on the efficiency at scale now across all the hyperscalers. I want to get a little more tactical here because I think that is where a lot of people watching will find the most to take home. Now, CrowdStrike is processing a significant volume of offers and co-sell activity. It's like the question I always find the most interesting is how you handle that volume without the team completely buckling under the weight. So looking at you for this one, Christian. Without giving away like the CrowdStrike secret sauce, what kind of operational improvement have you seen in how your team operates, and what drives it, and what drove it?
Yeah, I think we've been seeing nothing but an escalating volume of transactions, and not only just being accepted, but also just creating them. Managing that volume, I think we both know Tackle's been helpful in that scenario. We've seen a 50% time savings in the same quarter that we rolled the Tackle app into our production environment, That private offer workflow cut time by 50%. That gives us our cycles back in order to have the team work on other larger projects. We're not even done. So when it comes down to mapping and the features you have available now, taking advantage of everything that you have offered would be so beneficial to any organization, but also just being in the know and trying to help develop an even better platform with you. That's something we're looking forward to. That's just where I know I can find the most value in not only private offers, but co-sell, taking away all the friction between our sellers and our partners and making sure they have as much information as available as soon as they need it, that could just, scale without them having to have someone from an operations team interrupt or, chime in on it. We can have our alliance team kick off the communications, manage our sellers, and make sure that we can be there when they're ready to do the transaction.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And at Tackle, we spend a lot of time thinking about operational leverage. And exactly, Christian, like what you're describing is such a good example of what it looks like in practice. The goal is to make sure that as your volume scales, like your team doesn't have to scale that same rate, right? We try to avoid that. And the way you get there is by building the right processes and the right integrations before you need them. So Max, I definitely want to hear from your side on this because getting a Salesforce integration live and adopted across a large organization like CrowdStrike for sure has its own challenges. So, what did it actually take to get the Salesforce integration live and adopted across your team?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And as you, Kevin, know, this took months, maybe even over a year of work and cross collaboration between both Tackle and CrowdStrike to get it done. The team over at Tackle was a massive help throughout the entire engagement, being flexible with anything we needed and working with our requirements as we know they were pretty tough to work with. Internally, being CrowdStrike, we have very strict policies that we have to follow. I think that's pretty understandable. But we had many teams involved in making sure the implementation was smooth and set up properly. Of course, this aligned with multiple stakeholders on both the IT and the business sides, as well as we kind of mentioned earlier, but the security team as well. We had to make sure everything, whenever it was implemented into the system, that we were following those strict security protocols. Then, lastly, and a big key to this integration is, well, I think this was one of the most helpful things this integration helped us out with, I guess I should word it as, is it's taken a ton of work, manual work off of our ops teams, which allows us to focus on a lot of other projects to help the cloud business. And then I know you mentioned adoption. It was key for us throughout this entire engagement to not run into any interruptions with our cloud business. With our teams already familiar with Tackle, the app made it very simple and easy for our business teams to use. Whether it's the co-sell, creating an offer, or understanding the prospecting tool, the simplicity of it makes it very straightforward, and the adoption has taken off.
Just to add in there to just visibility, the visibility we've given the organization and our different teams, that's just been a great help. A lot of these questions and a lot of the reports that you guys have provided and a lot of the visibility are things that we've discussed. We've discussed either our team has asked for or to be a good metric for us to have on a regular basis. But now making that available in Salesforce somewhere where our team lives, that just helps take that load of inquiries off of our team's plate as well. We have more time for support, more time for actually closing deals.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's the theme of absorbing more volume, right? Operationally. And it's really a test of any operational infrastructure. Like, can it hold up when things get busier? That's always the question. Now, Billy, to you, I'm curious how this lands from your side because you're in front of the customers and partners, not necessarily in the day-to-day system building meetings like what I have with Christian and Max and the rest of the squad. So does with the ops and integration team building actually change how you work? Does it better operationally, like the infrastructure change what's possible on the alliance and revenue side, or does it just mostly feel kind of invisible to your side?
So I wouldn't say invisible. When Christian was talking about principles, right? I think I've got some for our business that I am, as AWS and people know, very passionate about. So let's use ACE as an example. I don't want anyone at CrowdStrike logging an ACE. Like, I am a firm believer in that. And if AWS's response to anything is, well, this is only available via ACE, I'm like, well, you need to get it into tackle, because we have too many applications, too many portals. Everyone logs into Okta and sees this big old wall of apps. And adding more stuff isn't beneficial to our sellers. So, from a workflow standpoint, one of the things that Max and Christian and I take very passionately is when we work through these workflows, we either bring in my team, but also our sales team to be part of the testing during it, because we don't want to disrupt anything or add additional steps to things that they are already doing, because that will slow down the pace in which we can do business. And if people are asking you to build quotes in this tool and work in this tool and log into that, it's just, you're not going to do it. So I'm very principled in what things can we build into the workflow that are the least amount of touch for our sales teams that deliver the most amount of value. And so, for example, when we talk about some of the secret sauce of whatever we do, have via the co-sell application, one of the things that was most important for me is automated triggers for co-sell, right? I don't want someone to have to decide that they are, need to go in a third-party system to work with AWS. I need that all in Salesforce, exposed to our sales teams, where they can use a motion that they already know. So the same way they would tag, CDW, SHI, or Deloitte on an op is the same way they tag AWS. And that downstream turns on our automation via Tackle to ACE, right? So I don't want my workflow for my seller being any different from a cloud partner than it would be from any other partner. The next piece of that is around the speed, and it's completely visible because from a transaction count standpoint, you can see that some of it's public, right? If you look 2 years ago, CrowdStrike officially did $1 billion through the marketplace all time. Now, over the last 2 years, we've done $1 billion plus a year, right? And we've done that without adding a lot of headcount to the team that's actually supporting the private offer function. And so we are very heavily leaning on automation to be able to deliver that, because if we had to throw bodies at it, it's just not a problem that we would be able to solve. But then it also helps our speed to transact, especially at the end of the quarters when we do a very high volume of transactions. So that 50% increase that Christian was talking about, that means from a seller asking, hey, send this deal to this customer, to that deal getting in the hands of the customer, that's 50% less time. And that is huge for us, because can't close the deal unless the private offer is sitting in the inbox. So we very much feel the impact of the operational changes, and we're very tight on those things because they understand where my pain points are. Then they can work with you and the team to be able to solve them. And, at this point, cloud marketplaces are a fundamental part of our go-to-market, right? We are doing billions of dollars a year through this go-to-market. So it's not just something the alliances team cares about. It's the sales, it's our AR team, it's our accounting teams, it's a lot of people look at the marketplace number within CrowdStrike now because it's kind of a barometer of our business.
No, that's all really great stuff, Billy. No, thank you. And yeah, I would love to spend the next several minutes now making this as useful as possible for everyone watching, because there is a tendency in some of these sessions, like this, for the audience to walk away incredibly energized by everything you guys have shared, but definitely uncertain about, okay, now what do I do next in my particular role? Most of the people watching are building or growing their cloud go-to-market motion just right now. And some of them have a dedicated alliance team. A lot of them have one or two people trying to get traction. Those solo heroes at an ISV. The CrowdStrike story is worth learning from, regardless of where you're at in your journey. And so, Billy, if someone in the audience is early in building their cloud go-to-market motion and they're trying to figure things out, especially where to focus on first, like, what's your advice to get started?
This one. So the first thing that I think about and a lot of organizations don't think about this way, but why is my company and this cloud provider in the room together? Right? What do we solve for a customer or prospect together that would make them want to have this conversation? I think it's so simple, but a lot of people get all captivated on, hey, we need to sign up for the marketplace or we need to get these solutions listed. Like just having that North Star of why we do what we do is very important. The next piece past that, once you understand that, is start small, right? Find a sales team within a region that you want to pilot it with and say, let's go try to work with AWS in the Northeast focused on, it doesn't need to be the big global financials. It can be someone smaller. Just find a couple of wins because once sellers see someone winning, they're going to want to know how they did it and the word will spread. And it'll give you some time to iterate over it and get it right before you say, I need to do a big global program to get everything off the ground. Like start small and find those wins there. And then once you get that piece, I can give an example from like back in my day. I've worked with companies as big as CrowdStrike, but when I was at AWS, I was a startup ISV account manager in my first role. So I was signing up companies for the APN for the very first time and helping them get logged into ACE for the first time and putting that first opportunity in there. So I've been across the whole scale of how this relationship works. But the real winners find small wins within a region. The other thing, and this is another thing that I stand by of my many, many principles, is Google is your best friend. AWS and Google do this thing where when a customer signs, a large strategic agreement, they typically make you make a press release around it. So if you Google a company name plus AWS, you might be able to figure out if they have a relationship with that cloud provider. He might have been a former tackler. Scott Millinger was one of the guys I worked with very early got me working with tackle almost 5-6 years ago. He used to go sit in QBRs with his laptop in the back. And if a customer was like, oh man, rep was like, I'm having so much trouble getting into Nike. He would Google Nike plus AWS and see whenever they made whatever announcement and would just hold the laptop above his head. And you're like, well, have you called AWS about it? And like, oh no, I didn't think of that. I'm like, I still use that every single day. I Google whatever company we're working on plus AWS every single day to figure out if they have a relationship. It's like not rocket science. Doing things like that to help your sales team understand that, typically AWS has a deep relationship within these customers for years. They're solving problems for these customers that you're looking to work with, and using that as a way to help get a connection it's not rocket science. No, those are a couple of things that I do that really I think are the places I'd like to start.
Yeah, no, it's such a great point of making a couple great points there, but the one for making the internal case is one I hear consistently from tackle customers. We also preach this on our side, and the alliance leader, they often know exactly what's possible, but they're spending a significant amount of energy getting the rest of the org to see it. So Christian, you've been living that challenge from the ops side for years at this point. So through your ops lens, like where do most teams get it wrong when they're trying to build out a cross-functional go-to-market motion?
Yeah, focusing on one area and not taking a look at the entire scope. When you start getting too deep into either one area, one provider, you tend to either put something on pause or just delay it further than you needed to. If you were to take a look at everything as if they were on the same playing field, you would be able to say like, okay, what's our game plan for releasing this in the most efficient way? I think when organizations look at how they're doing operations, if there's manual processes in place, they look at how can we get out of this manual process as fast as possible, but not necessarily in a way where we can scale it. We've moved on from, manual processes a long time ago, but now that it's at a point where automation and logic are taking the front row seat, how do we make sure that it doesn't matter how many clouds come out in the future, they all can onboard and have a same or similar experience? My role at the company isn't to get in the way of a transaction, is to make sure that whoever the seller is trying to work with, they don't even need to know we really exist, to be honest. The transaction is going to happen, and hopefully it's going to happen without any hiccups. If there is a hiccup, we have a fail safe. We have, plenty of backup models or methods to make sure a transaction goes through across the line, but taking a look at everything you have in front of you and not just being laser focused on one hyperscaler versus the other. I think that's where operationally we come in as, leaders in the industry.
And Christian, what Christian just described definitely is what separates companies that plateau from the ones that just keep growing. And it comes down to whether cloud go to market, and as Christian, we've gone through this together, is a shared organizational responsibility or one person's full time job, if not multiple jobs. And so, Max, like from the systems and integration side, what's the advice for teams that are early in that journey? And what should teams be thinking about before they're at CrowdStrike scale? They can even hopefully get there.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to sound really simple, but, and I just can't stress it enough. The biggest things I can recommend are making sure you know your business, because every single company utilizes cloud marketplaces differently. Who in your company is going to be utilizing the application? And also just fully understand the requirements from the business. Again, I kind of just hinted on it, but you need to understand what's actually going to work for you and your company so that you can go to market with tackle the best. And then secondly, and this is a big one, is engage with the tackle team as early and as often as possible within this process. The engineers and business teams massively helped us throughout the entire engagement, just making sure the solution actually works for our go-to market and how we actually utilize all the different cloud marketplaces.
Lots of teamwork, Max. Oh yeah. I want to close on something forward looking because one of the most useful things this audience can take away is a sense of where the leading edge of this is all headed. Now, CrowdStrike is still actively building. The $1 billion AWS milestone now plus publicly announced is just really one chapter in a much longer story. I want to give each of you a chance to point at what's next from your own vantage point. So, gentlemen, like you hit that $1 billion AWS milestone, you're transacting on all three major hyperscalers. Obviously, Microsoft, very new. What does the next chapter look like from where you're at?
Yeah. So, I mean, from my point of view, I want to continue doing the things that are being seen by the business team and publicly. But I'm also trying to make sure that we use Tackle to the best of our ability to enhance all of our internal operations as well. We do so well with AWS, and I personally see no reason why we can't do the same with any other provider, not just the other hyperscalers we're currently working with, but anybody who comes on board in the future. Right now, I think we're in a very good space where the publicly, we're showing that we have the operations and the ability to scale. But now it's how do we form this team or use this team that we have to the best of our ability to make sure it happens across all of our cloud providers. Again, I don't really see any. I'm not in the sales role, of course, but I don't see any reason or any challenge why we wouldn't want to scale with those other two providers. And my job is to just make sure it's possible.
Yeah, and then I mean, just to add on top of that, me from my role specifically is I'm going to have a large focus on operational efficiency and just growing our cloud business from a systematic standpoint. Billy is about to hit on how we're going to do it from a sales focus, but CrowdStrike has massive goals, and I need to figure out how I can make life easier for his team in order to achieve those.
I guess to wrap it up, I stand by this. I think marketplaces are one of the most transformational transaction vehicles that have ever been created, right? Back in the day, I used to say I could sell anything to a marketplace. I can sell you B2B SaaS, or I can sell you a Pokemon card. Like you figure it out, you give me an account ID, we can sell it, right? So I'm starting to look at the future of some of these transactional vehicles, whether it be some of the things that Salesforce is doing. I know Anthropic just announced their partner network, so there may be something there coming on the lines. Like I'm starting to look at the future as we're building relationships with the real AI players in the game, how they're going to start facilitating their own transactional vehicles. And so that's really interesting to me right now. I think from a speed to transaction standpoint, I'd love to do a bit more with artificial intelligence, express private offers, automated renewals, like do things that actually drive down our cost of sale. from an operation standpoint. So that's really top of mind for me. And the last piece is regional, right? As we go into different geographies, the purchasing methodology changes. And so what works for me here in the US might not work as well in Brazil or may not work as well in Japan when you start looking at the different tiers of distribution models and the vehicles that they use to be able to transact and tax models, et cetera. So we built a very large scale of what we're able to do to facilitate, let's call it 90% of the business, right? The core US, EMEA based customers who are buying through a traditional marketplace method. Now we're starting to look at hyper regionalized methods for some of the countries in which it's a bit different from a transactional standpoint. But it all comes back to doing what we want to do best, get our solution in the hands of companies in the easiest way possible to solve their problem.
Just to add on to that too, in order for us to expand regionally, we have to free up time. That's just one of the areas where whatever efficiencies or whatever enhancements we can do to free up our time allows us to spend more time in those regions directly and not just, play the priority game. I think that's where we want to put a lot of focus into not just what's being seen publicly or announced publicly, but doing the right thing so that the organization grows in the right direction.
And cross-functional cloud go-to-market at scale comes from the right people right here. With the right remit, trusting each other, trusting other organizations, other teams, trusting each other's execution and building toward the same goal. So Christian, Max, Billy, you've been incredibly generous with what you've shared today. And I know the people watching are going to take something real away from this. So on behalf of Tackle and everyone at Cloud Go-to-Market XP, thank you guys. And everyone watching, the playbook is in here. Go build something with it.